So you're probably wondering what we're going to do in social studies this year. Maybe we'll just stare at this beautiful picture of this metal ball with a ball within a ball. Maybe that's what we're going to do this year. No, we're not. But we are going to stare at world views. Look at world views. Investigate them. But what is a world view? Maybe you're thinking a world view is maybe just like looking at the world from a satellite, or imagining if we were on the moon. But that sounds pretty boring, right? I mean, how much could you tell just sitting there looking at the world from the outside? Maybe you're thinking, hey, a worldview is kind of like climbing that mountain. Getting that great perspective. Having the sun just cast the world before you. Maybe we're going to look at stuff like that this year. But that's not really what we mean when we say worldview, especially in social studies. Because a worldview is a collection of beliefs about life and the universe held by an individual or a group. Really, it's the overall perspective from which one sees and interprets the world. So, a worldview has much more to do with what you think and how you act than necessarily what you see through your eyeballs. But that sounds confusing, right? Well, let's break it down a bit. Let's tell a story. Your textbook has a great story about the sound of the Kalahari Desert. You see them in a movie called The Gods Must Be Crazy, which is a pretty cool movie because it shows a bushman in an isolated world, and suddenly what happens is a Coke bottle drops from the sky, this glass Coke bottle, and it starts to change the entire society. They don't know what to do with it. They start to value it and fight over it. They start to think about life in different ways, and eventually a lot of their worldviews start to shift. They've had intervention from the outside. Life is never going to be the same again. In fact, in the movie, one of the main characters, Chi, he realizes that the object is so dangerous to his people and their way of life that he just decides to venture to the end of the earth and return the gift to the gods, rather than watch his way of life change. So what happens in this movie can kind of be summarized as isolation, because the bush people were isolated, intercultural contact, and then change. So their beliefs and their ideas about the world and time and their values, these are all parts of their worldview. But maybe you're saying to yourself, hey, come on, I'm from Canada. Like, everybody's pretty similar here. We all look at the world in the same way. Not really. Let me tell you a story about Gurbaj Singh Multani. It's a true story. He was a student in Montreal. And what happened is, his kirpan, or his ceremonial dagger, that comes from his belief system, his faith background, fell out one day. And there was kind of a stir in the school, and they told me he couldn't wear it anymore. And the case went to the Supreme Court, and they argued that the kirpan was a religious symbol of their faith, and that to ban it would be to infringe on his rights and his freedoms, as outlined in the Canadian Charter. And what happened is, they won. So he was allowed to wear his kirpan to school, even though the school, who came from a different worldview perspective, initially didn't want him to do it, didn't want him to bring it with him. Can you think of any time that you've had kind of your own worldview, or the way that you think the world should be, or how people should act, or what you value, kind of bump into somebody else's? Have you ever got invited over to some friend's house, and maybe they made you take off your shoes outside as a way to respect their culture, and yet at your home you just leave them on? Has anybody experienced anything like that? Well, maybe some of you have, some of you haven't. And so maybe you're kind of confused. Okay, I kind of get this worldview thing. There's some things involved, but like, is my worldview just like my opinions? Like whether I like pizza or Coke, or if I think that hockey is the greatest sport in the world, is my opinion just my worldview then? Like, we all disagree on something. Not really. Your worldview takes into account your opinions, but it's so much more. A worldview is both your opinions about the world, what your people group believes, but a worldview also creates meaning, right? A worldview has answers, or suggests answers to the questions like, who are we? Where do we come from? How do we go about doing life? What should we be doing in life? What's good? What's evil? All these things are contained in our worldview. And the thing is, our worldview doesn't always stay the same. Remember the story from the movie The Gods Must Be Crazy? When worldviews collide, or they clash, or when you live with someone else, sometimes your worldview gets affected by that. Throughout the course, we're going to be looking at different aspects of worldview. Here's a good diagram to see what kind of plays into how you see the world. Your beliefs play into it, like with the Kirpan incident. Your values, like the gods must be crazy. Society, geography, knowledge, economy, time, everything affects how you see the world. It's fascinating. We get to ask cool questions about, like, the economy. How should our economy be run? Who controls resources? What should we teach people? Does it matter that we don't live near the ocean if we live in Alberta? Geography, does it affect how we treat other people? Do we really think that our friends in the Eastern Canada, are on the same team as us in the West? Doesn't always seem that way. It all plays into your world view. And so we're going to explore these things. It's going to be awesome.